A number of years ago, I had the pleasure to go and speak at a conference in Ohio, and I met one of you here, at least, who is from Ohio, and I got to take my then young teenage son, Luke, with me on that trip. And in the course of our journey, we found ourselves traveling through one of the busiest airports in the United States of America. And after making it through security, which is often a miracle for this very innocent-looking Arab, my son Luke points to the left-hand side and he goes, "Dad, look. Isn't that one of our ministry's $1 million bill gospel tracts?" So I look to the left-hand side and I see a counter. Behind the counter were 3 police officers. On the counter was this little metal card holder, and on that was this kind of rectangular-looking object. So I start walking over there, kind of wiping my eyes, not really thinking I'm seeing what I thought I was seeing. And so I arrive at the counter and I realize that my son was wrong. It was not one of our ministry's $1 million bill gospel tracts. It was an entire stack of our ministry's $1 million bill gospel tracts. So I'm looking at this thing. I felt kind of like I was in the Twilight Zone when all of a sudden one of the police officers starts to walk over toward me. And I go, "Excuse me, officer, I'm a bit confused. My ministry prints these tracts up and I have no idea how they got here." And he looks at me and he goes, "Easy." And I go, "Ah!" It was Ray Comfort. I had nothing to do with this. He goes, "Easy. Oh, man, I can't believe you're here. I love your ministry. This is crazy." And suddenly it starts to dawn on me. And I go, "Excuse me, officer, did you put these tracts here?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I go, "They haven't stopped you?" I'm thinking, "They haven't busted you yet?" He goes, "Not yet." I remember thinking, it's coming. So I gave him my card. I said, "Officer, I would love to hear the backstory to this thing, so please email me." And so I get home from my trip to Ohio, and I find this email in my inbox from that police officer. He said, "Good morning, sir. As the subject line says, it was nice to meet you and your son yesterday at the airport. Yesterday was the first time I've ever set the tracts out at the law enforcement podium, even though the thought occurred to me a few years ago when I first learned of your ministry through a homeschool conference. When my 2 partners and I arrived at the podium yesterday, I pulled out the tract and set them up. They were curious and read the tract, including the gospel message on the back. That then sparked a conversation that lasted several hours. I used info from Ray Comfort, Vodi Bakum, Ken Ham, and all the other info I've picked up from a variety of sources like the Bible. They were not getting it. They challenged me on everything from ancient aliens to why are the Jews God's chosen people. Then you walked up, and you looked like an ancient alien. Easy, phone home. Then you walked up. After you left, I had to explain who you were and the total improbability of you walking up at that moment. As one of my partners put it, it was like having an Amazon Kindle on display, talking about Amazon products, and then Jeff Bezos, CEO of Amazon, walking up. Using God's blessing of mobile internet, I showed them livingwaters.com, 180, Noah, God versus Evolution, and whatever else was up on the screen. After a 10-hour shift of witnessing, I believe they will begin following Christ. How amazing is that? Now, I'm sure you can imagine how overwhelmed with joy I was after I read this email. I mean, as one of the officers put it, truly, how can something like that happen by random chance? Of all the days that we could have been traveling, it was that day. Of all the airports that we could have gone through, it was that airport. Of the multiple security checkpoints at that airport, it happened to be that specific one. Of all the directions my son could have looked in, it was in that direction. Of all the days that officer thought about putting out our gospel tracts, it was that very day. And of all the things that he could have been doing when I walked up, he was sharing the gospel out of one of my ministry's gospel tracts. If you don't believe in the existence of God, you have got problems.